Right? Guys, real pleasure to be here. I want to sort of do a couple things. This is a really, really awesome opportunity for me. When Dilip asked me to come and speak, this was exciting for me because this is a topic that is like really dear to my heart, and it's actually something that a large part of my purpose, no pun intended on my name of the company, is presently focused on how do we solve for the big issues that our industry faces, or my industry faces. And that is that I work in an industry that has just got it all wrong. And it has gone down a path for the last 30 plus years and got it all wrong. And I want to change that. And I woke up about 5-6 years ago, and I've just been on this path now to fix it. And I want to tell you that story. I want to tell you the story of how I ultimately got to this point of recognition, and then I'll tell you a little bit about why I think we're getting it all wrong and the relevance of it. I also would love to just, I'll give you the story of how I have done what I've done, like my history as a sort of startup, building businesses and doing all the things I've been doing and why I do it. Because I think for every single person in this room, you know, and the quality of the conversations that I just heard, you know, it sounds like you guys have some real interesting kind of goals in your own minds. And I think every single person in this room has the power to do amazing things. And I can tell you that, you know, look to the left, look to the right. You all can do awesome things. There's nobody holding you back, and you can go and accomplish things even greater than I've ever done in my career or will ever do in my career, and I hope you do. That's what I hope you do. I hope that that's what you get inspired by more than anything else from this conversation. So let me give you this path as to why I get to why our industry is on the wrong, has got things wrong, and why. So my background, I'm an immigrant to this country. Came to this country with nothing. Very proud of the fact that I got that wonderful, lucky opportunity to be educated and to start my career in one of the greatest open countries in the world. And for just that alone, we should all be thankful in this room because you have that advantage over 95% of the population in the world. So that's great one. So that was a really big thing. Came to the country. I wanted to be an architect, didn't because of money. I'll get back to why that's important in a minute. Went into engineering at this wonderful institution, decided to go into finance because of money. I'll get back to why that's the second reason why that's important. Worked at RBC in investment banking for a number of years, and then, 2 years or 3 years into the business, was home at 3 in the morning and was weeping on my bed and realizing that, hey, wait a minute, this concept of this goal of making money is dumb. It's dumb. It doesn't make you happy. And I know it's cliche to say that, but it doesn't. And it was for so long in my life, I had these big brand ambitions that money was going to be the be-all and end-all. And now I was a young kid on the path of doing that, and I wasn't happy. And I realized that I wasn't unhappy. It's just that I had set the wrong goal for myself. And I got to tell you, the moment I liberated myself from that principle of I got to make decisions using money as a goal, I actually all of a sudden had this great clarity. And at that point, I actually made a decision that I was not going to, well, first I had to reassess what my goals were. And my first number one goal was that I realized that what I really enjoy, what makes me happy, was this concept of seeing progress, seeing my ideas move to the next level, to really see the impact. I guess that's why I want to be an architect. I want to see the outcome of something that I created or developed. And so I said to myself, I need to go. I need to go do something else. And I didn't know what yet, so I didn't want to put the cart before the horse. But I said I need to do this. And I am a big believer. One of my biggest fears in life is complacency. And complacency is because, we cognitively will drive ourselves to say, oh, we'll do it next year. I'll do it next year. And I think that for most people, that should be your biggest fear, complacency. And so I actually set myself a very specific rule and discipline. And that was, at the age of 30, if I am still working at RBC, on my birthday, I will walk in and I will resign that very day, with one asterisk, and that was that if I was on the path to become CEO. Which ironically, when I did resign and my boss kind of called me and I said, am I on the path to become CEO? And he's like, well, I go, well, I'm resigning then. So anyways, I had set this now, and it set a discipline in my mind that I need to now look and think about what's next. So a couple of years later, I decided I got an opportunity. And I went off, I left RBC to go build my first company. And that was an asset management company called Claymore. Now, I was 28 years old, had no clue what I was doing. I'd never run an asset management company in the world before, but I figured I could give it a try. And I had some good training in the background. I'd covered asset management companies, and I had this great idea that was simply, look, I think we can win in investment management by creating really great investment products, by marrying the best of what active money managers do with the best of what passive money managers do. And I built Claymore on this concept of fundamental indexing. Really interesting story, amazing concept, but I had no credibility. First couple of years, went out there, told my story, and then all of a sudden, I started to see some great success. Now, the biggest thing that happened to us that was really powerful was that I had the 2008 and 2009 crisis. And why? Because what I realized was that people don't want to hear about new ideas, really, if they're happy and they're complacent. And, pre-2008, everyone was happy. They didn't care if how much money they were making, they were doing well. So at a time when they were doing well, they sort of never really asked the question, how much better could I have been doing? Or how much did I pay in fees? And how much cheaper could I have gotten to get better at this? So my story wasn't really resonating, it was early adopters, but it really wasn't resonating. But then all of a sudden, 08 and 09 happened, and that created disruption. And disruption is a wonderful thing to the psyche, because all of a sudden people were paying attention. And I was out there telling a story for a couple of years, and guess what? I won. And my business went from, for the first couple of years, grew from 2005 to the end of 2008. We grew to about $1 billion now. So that's really, really a wonderful story, just that alone. In 2009, we went to 4.4. So we went from 1 to 4. So we quadrupled. And then 2010, we grew to 5.7 billion. 2011 to 6.5. And then in the 2 months, I sold it to BlackRock. In March of 2012, we were at 8 billion. So great momentum in that period. So it took me 4 years to get to $1 billion. It took me 3 to get to 8. It was quite amazing. And why that happened was, again, because if I was going to disrupt or create change, I needed to have some disruption around on the customer base. And that's what 2008, 2009 happened. And that's what's really powerful. So, a large part of that is also luck. Every success story you ever hear about is a significant percentage of luck associated with that. Now, associated also with a significant amount of effort and thoughtfulness, but luck is critical. So in your careers and the things you're doing, you got to appreciate that hard work comes as a key part of this thing, but also you got to have great luck. Never get discouraged, because if you don't get lucky at one point, keep going. The effort will create the luck you want. Okay. Anyways, at that stage, now I sold the company and I stepped away and I thought a little bit about what I'd done, and it was a really unique set of stories. So first off, in about 2009, in the middle of that whole experience, I was introduced to a new partner. So I had a financial partner in my first business. They sold their stake to another financial partner in 2009. And all of a sudden, this financial partner was a unique New York player that had some interesting attributes. There was a Guggenheim family. And the Guggenheim family was running money for many billionaire families alongside of themselves. And I was introduced to their key people around how they think about how they manage money for other wealthy individuals. And they had, at this time, they had been working with this really interesting individual. I think you know him, named Danny Kahneman. And Danny Kahneman was advising Guggenheim on how to think about the cognitive way to manage money for very, very wealthy individuals. And I started to really dig in on what they were doing. And it was really quite fascinating. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. What they basically were looking at was, what is the value of what we do as a money manager? And they said, is our job to make these people lots of money? Or is our job to make our clients happy? And especially when the customer is already very wealthy. And what they recognized is, we have a big issue. Our customers come to us with lots of money, and they think, emotionally, that they need to make lots of money. They need us to make 10, 15, 20%. But in fact, they don't. What they really care about is not losing 20% or 30%. And this is a really critical thing. You cannot tell somebody that. They have to get there on their own. And so what they worked with Danny on doing was really helping them create a model on how to drive this story and convince the customer on what their goals should be and what will make them happy. And very simply use a lot of the principles of prospect theory, the dollar loss, dollar gain, the principles of how to look at bucketing, wins and losses, to look at holistic wealth. So very simply, whenever we created these 2 portfolio models, which was saying, your core conservative portfolio, what we call the stay rich portfolio, and the get-rich portfolio, and the stay-rich portfolio would be the concept of you won't lose money there. And the get-rich portfolio was the concept of, hey, you can participate in the upside. But the big thing was the concept of bucketing. When the market was doing really well, the mind of the client would bucket towards where the get-rich portfolio was. It had the Facebooks, it had all the things, the cocktail discussions, the things when you went into the room and your friend was saying, I'm in this real estate play, and you could say, yeah, I'm doing well too. But it was only like 10 or 15% of the person's wealth. But when the markets were doing poorly, the individual pointed their mind towards their total wealth, the whole portfolio. And of course, that was participating quite differently than the markets themselves, so they felt very comfortable. And so this principle was so critical to me, And I just loved it. I started to become this student of behavioral economics. I started to become, so curious about sort of cognitive thinking and sociology in many ways. And it started to play into the way I was thinking about my business. And then, of course, all along this was I interrupted the business and sold the company. And then I stepped back at what I'd done. Now, you probably don't know anything about what Claymore's products were or anything, but I just want to tell you a story. The first product I launched was this thing called fundamental indexing. And it was based on this very simple principle that I can beat the markets by taking fundamental thinking as opposed to market cap weighting of indexing, and using a discipline, keeping my costs low. And over time, I'm going to compound my cost benefit, and I'm going to compound my fundamental thinking benefit. Okay? That was the principal idea. And I launched this product, and I got slaughtered by the market, by the media. Rob Carrick, who's a big commentator, a good friend of mine now, at the time he wasn't so much of a good friend, wrote a terrible article, scathing article about why do we need this guy in this? We've got these great benchmark products out there. Why do we need this thing? This is silly, tearing me apart. Well, anyways, I kept telling my story. Years went by. That first product hit its 5-year number, and that's the part where I sort of think that you can judge a person if they're doing a good job or not. 5-year numbers, and it was the #1 performing Canadian equity fund in all of Canada. Not number 2 or number 3. It didn't just beat the indexes. It beat every active money manager in this country. And it was a stupid, dumb index. That was it. Just fundamental thinking. And, of course, fast forward a couple more years, what we saw in our business was consistently this. Now, after I sold the company, as I said, I was very proud of what I did, but I looked back at what I accomplished and I said, what did I really do? And going back to the behavioral elements, if I said, I may have developed this product. I went out there and told people that I can go create great, better products. I can outperform the benchmark. I can do all these things. But guess what? In 2008, we went down 40% just like the market did. And yes, if someone had bought it on day 1 and sold it on year 7, they would have done, better than the index. But as you know, that's not the way people really invest. And people really invest with emotions. And so they buy high, they sell low. And what I recognized alongside of this, I was also going to some really phenomenal research, which actually I'll come back to this in a second. What I realized was, did I really do anything incrementally beneficial to our industry? Did I? And I really started to feel crappy about it because I figured I was falling into the same trap as everyone else. And that's not the right thing to do. And this is where I realized our industry has got it wrong. Every day in our industry, the financial services industry, people wake up and money managers are sitting there saying, I can beat the markets. I can beat benchmarks. I can beat the S&P 500. I can do better than this. And all they do is they tout to you why I am better than buying just a benchmark index or whatever it be. That's all they do. Meanwhile, clients are over here saying, I want to meet a goal. I want to meet a liability. I want to meet a retirement outcome. They're not looking at indexes. But the principal issue, though, is the people on this side, you and me and everybody else who's thinking about goals, outcomes, and things like that, are doing it with a big headwind, and that is our emotions. And there's a really phenomenal piece of research that does not get enough attention. And it's called the Dalbar research on investment funds. Okay? So every day you open up the paper, you probably, in the financial papers, you hear about, hey, this active money manager didn't beat this passive fund, or, the active industry is not doing its job, and, you've got trillions, and I mean trillions of dollars, and, phenomenally intelligent people doing everything they can to tell people why I can squeak out 20 basis points or 50 basis points of additional return relative to an index. But they're forgetting the one biggest thing is that, my customers don't get that return regardless. And that is the Dalbar research. The Dalbar research looks at returns of investors in investment funds, and they just use research of mutual funds just for simplicity, but because it's good data going back many, many years. And they look at the actual return of an investor because of the times they buy and the times they sell versus the market index, or even versus the fund return itself. And you know what the study has shown with pure consistency for 30 years? That the investor return is about half of that of the market. Half of that of the investment fund itself. So meaning if the investment fund has compounded 8% for 30 years, the investors made 4%. And that is because they have bought with emotion. They've bought and they've sold with emotion. This is such an important piece of information, and our industry doesn't even talk about it. You'll never pick up the paper and hear Rob Carrick, unfortunately, talk about it. Instead, you get a lot of printed paper talking about why you shouldn't buy an active fund or you should buy a passive fund or whatever it be. And I fell into the same trap too. And what you realize is that we have an entire industry that's focused on the absolute wrong thing. And we need to change that. We need to start to focus on how do they think about the end customer's experience and what the decisions they're making around the products. I don't care if the market gave 8 and the fund gave 8.2 or 7.8, it's irrelevant if the customer is buying and selling at the wrong time. We need to start talking about that. So I started Purpose with this principal goal, which is I'm going to start to focus on how do we change an industry. I changed an industry with Claymore. I can tell you, I had a really amazing impact on the ripple effect of what our peers are doing. 10 years on, our industry has responded quite amazingly. Fees are coming down. Active long-only money managers are changing their principal. Indexing has become a big part of our community. It's an amazing, amazing trend that we're seeing. This is a positive thing. But now we've got to change the industry even more towards helping and solving the real long-term goals of our customers. Because what the reality is that most of us, when we invest, will not meet our goals, not because that, I bought an active fund or I bought a mutual fund or an ETF or whatever it be, because I got in my own way. That's why. And we need to change that. So I've been very focused on this. And I've done it in a few ways. So I started Purpose. We've done an amazing job of focusing on much more goals-based, outcome-based, risk management focus, keeping people dedicated and reducing volatility. Because in my opinion, the thing that hurts us is that principal concept of, prospect theory, which says $1 a loss and $1 a gain don't equal each other. Well, the symmetry of the markets is 1-to-1, effectively. And actually, really good piece of information for you is that the symmetry of the markets is actually worse than that. And a stock portfolio, just to give you a concept, if prospect theory says that you have a 2-to-1 ratio of dollar of gain versus dollar of loss, that you need $2 of gain to equal $1 of loss, what the market actually is a 1-to-2 ratio, meaning that you can get 1 times return for 2 times risk. That means that most investors, if you're just owning a portfolio of stocks, will have very, very many periods of uncomfortableness and low sleep nights because of that portfolio. And you will be likely forced into making a decision that will put you in a bad position. So we have to change that. So we have to think differently. So just by virtue of this concept, we have to be thinking differently. So anyways, that's what we've been doing at Purpose. We've been doing some amazing things, and it's a core principle. And my hope is that in 5 years, similar to what we did with Claymore, in 5 years, we'll help our industry peers recognize this more. And we're already seeing some really cool things happening. I'm really proud of that. Now, one principal thing is that whenever you want to, again, disrupt an industry, whenever you want to make change or create, be a change agent in any way, you got to also, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, you've got to create a business that actually is applicable. So you got to be the leader. You got to be willing to think 5-7 years out and drive that change. But you also got to build businesses that people want to pay attention to today. And so that's what we've been doing, and it's really quite amazing. We're now just under $3 billion in assets in a couple of years, and that's all because you create a company that people actually make it relevant today, but also drive people to where you want them in the next 5 years. So that's sort of the story of where we've got to. I think there's amazing incremental benefits and synergies in all of society by applying the principles of behavior and sociology to all businesses, whether it's entrepreneurial efforts and ideas that some of the ideas that are coming out of today, or if it's in big corporations thinking differently, if it's in our lives, it's in politics, it's in everything we do. There are so many simple principles that we can imply and input into the way we run businesses, to the way we handle relationships, to the way we deal with our consumers in any way, and they can have a meaningful impact for the outcome. Not only make your organization more successful, but also help with your customers to really drive them to a better place. I am a pure entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurship. And I can tell you that whatever you do in your careers, whether you go out on your own or whether you do it internally within a big organization, you have to take the mindset of entrepreneurial thinking and apply it to everything you do. And entrepreneurship is critical, it's great, but intrapreneurship is another area where you don't get enough people talking about it. And that is, when you go work with others, when you work in a big organization, is take the principles of an entrepreneurial mindset and drive an organization to change from within. So use guys like Mark Zuckerberg and others that are really amazing muses and inspirations for us all today. But figure out, you don't have to be going out and build the next Facebook. You can do it within RBC, Procter & Gamble, or any organization. You can think the same way and create that same change from within. And those big organizations, remember, they're big so don't always think that, they're never going to get it right. They're there for a reason. They got there because they once were great. They did something really meaningful early on. They may have lost their way along the way, but that's where you guys can make a big difference. So think not only about doing it on your own, but think about how you can do and help others within Big Corp as well. Okay? Guys, real pleasure to be here. Good luck to all of the groups. I caught the last couple really interesting stories. Take this thinking and the experience that you have in building these ideas and use it in every element, because I can tell you, if you build businesses without thinking about the impact on the end consumer and us as humans, you will fail. Build businesses always with the end consumer and the behaviors of our consumers in your mind, and you will win. I promise you. Okay? Great, guys. Thank you.